Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. And everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well and you are ready for today's show. So today we have, of course, Ralph Mond. He is our guest every single Friday, and he joins us to talk about, new things, fun things, science things. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a really good segment and you are in for a treat. With that being said, welcome back into Computer America. ComputerAmerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including the show notes. Ralph puts a lot of work into those, and we really appreciate that. And you can find them in case you were like, no way, Ralph, that's totally not a thing. You can check it yourself. Trust us. So with that being said, ComputerAmerica.com, we have a whole segment at the top of the website dedicated to Ralph. And of course, on YouTube, we have a whole playlist. So his shows are very special. Like, you could probably go back 2 or 3 years and find stuff that, hasn't even come to fruition. This is actual research, and admittedly, some of it may never will, but a lot of it is still very, very entertaining. So if you don't get enough today, you can, of course, find other segments by Ralph, and it'll be a lot of fun. So with that being said, social media links, all that good stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and bring Ralph on and just have fun with it. So, once again, I want to bring on Ralph. He is our science and technology trends correspondent. And if you're confused about what that means, don't worry. He has you covered. So, Ralph, welcome back onto the program. How you been?
Great. It's great to be back. Happy February, everybody. And you talked about what I do, trends, folks. There's 2 forms of the trends you're going to always experience with us every Friday. One is things that are happening now, being delivered now, but they reflect a trend you need to be aware of or watch as it grows in the future. Okay, that's one part of it. The other part that Ben was alluding to, that you could go back several years and maybe still read a story that hasn't come to fruition, if I could say that, on a Friday morning. That's the kind of twinkle in the eye, very early research trend. So I kind of look at both of those things. And I also look at everything from robotics and medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, all across the board. And we have a fun mix of 4 stories. And then at the end of the show notes, if you come out to computeramerica.com, I have what we call honorable mentions, and these are stories we didn't have time to cover, but I thought would be fun to share. They have the links and pictures and everything in there if you want to dive deeper, not only in the stories that we're going to talk about today, but the honorable mentions as well. So we've got a real fun mixed bag for today.
We certainly do. And of course, we'll start with story number 1 for everyone out there who, by the time that you hear this, the show notes will be available for you to peruse. But if you want to follow along, story number 1 sounds a little reminiscent of some of previous stories, but we've heard it from planes, trains, and buses. It seems like this idea really highlights the trends part of your title. So let's talk about it.
Yes, in fact, this first story, actually, to your point about going back a couple of years ago, we talked about a technology and an approach to capturing wind energy that's embodied in this story. So let's get into this. The headline here is, "This small turbine can access the power of passing cars." And long-term listeners will go, wait a minute, you guys did a story like this a couple of years. Well, we'll talk about that. This comes from CNN. It is, however, a great, I hope, trend story of where we're going to go with wind capture, because it's just such a simple and obvious idea. We've got videos and links and so forth in the show notes, but here we go. On the roof of the O2 Arena, one of London's largest indoor venues, there's a small cluster of very peculiar wind turbines. They look nothing like the tall, imposing ones that are increasingly deployed both inland and offshore around the world, right? The big things that look like a stick with the giant blades. You know what I'm talking about. These little guys, though, are less than 6 feet or 1.8 meters in height, And they're a fraction of their size, meaning the fraction of the size, of course, of the gigantic ones you see out in the farm fields and out in the ocean and so forth. And of course, naturally, they produce much less energy, but that's not the point. Being small gives them a strategic advantage. They can be deployed almost anywhere and were designed to be retrofitted onto existing streetlights. Start putting this together, folks, where they can be powered not just by the wind, but also by the artificial breeze created by passing vehicles. So there's a fellow named Barry Thompson. He's the CEO of a company called Alpha 311, and their website's really fun, by the way. The company that designed the turbines noted, as Mr. Thompson said, if you stand next to the road and a bus comes past you, you feel the airflow. Well, that's true with big freight trucks and passenger cars as well, right? And then he goes on to say this. I love this because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Mr. Thompson, you didn't do your homework, because he goes on to say, why is nobody harnessing the energy that cars are generating when they drive past? And in my show notes, I have a big red alert. Wait, see the side note below. And this is what I was alluding to a moment ago. Ben, you and I covered a story long ago, about 2 years ago, I think, about a similar solution applied in Turkey, in Istanbul. According to an article in The Independent, Istanbul has installed wind turbines that generate electricity using their air turbulence generated by traffic. So you go out and look at the links about this story, you'll see it's kind of like a freeway, and down the median strip are all these little wind turbines. Very clever.
If I recall off the top of my head, they had dedicated bus lanes that, like, not normal cars can go, only buses. And it was buses going, kind of left and right between these two large, air turbulence causing vehicles, they put those turbines, so it was a really nice, clean solution.
Yeah, for the installation in Turkey that Ben's talking about, just picture in your mind a median strip and then these little row of these turbines, these columnar turbines, which the story we're talking about also is the same kind of thing. And the turbines known as Enlil, E-N-L-I-L, which I think was the god of wind in some ancient religion, are vertical and can harness air currents created by moving vehicles to generate energy while also absorbing solar power. They were a combo. They have been placed on roadsides in Turkey's largest city, Istanbul, to soak up the wind generated by passing vehicles. And there's even a video we can show you in the show notes about that application. So with that said, truth in lending here, Mr. Thompson, with due respect, you're not the first guy to figure this out. This has been done elsewhere, but it's still a wonderful idea that, Ben, it just pains me to think we could line our highways with these devices and generate cumulatively, not individual column, but cumulatively, an enormous amount of power, free of charge.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, now, after the successful trial on the O2 huge amphitheater thing, Alpha 311 is preparing to launch a refined version of the turbine that would be suitable for commercial installations. So they're still kind of in the early phases of testing, deployment, real world application. And now they're getting ready to go out to the world. They're made of carbon fiber, and each turbine is 5.9 feet or 1.8 meters tall and weighs about 88 pounds or 40 kilograms for our Canadian and the rest of the world friends. But the section that actually turns only weighs just a little over 30 pounds. And Mr. Thompson, the CEO of Alpha 311, once again, he says, we designed a wind turbine that is very, very light, relatively speaking, folks. It turns so much more easily than a heavier glass fiber or metal wind turbine. And we use street lights. This is clever, though. We use street lights for the road installation because the pole is already connected to the grid. Clever. That part, I think, is very good. Yeah, and he adds that because the cabling in streetlights was designed for traditional lighting fixtures, which required far more energy than the current replacement LED bulbs, let that sink in for a second, the infrastructure necessary to handle the electricity produced by the turbine is already in place. The energy can be used immediately to power the streetlight, and the excess can be sold back into the grid, providing a revenue stream for the local authority that manages or owns the road. There's a great motivation win-win scenario, right? Because again, he's saying typical streetlights, for example, in Hillsboro, Oregon, it's outside of Portland where I live, they're doing this. They're retrofitting the existing old streetlights, getting rid of any of the I guess you would basically say incandescent or halogen or whatever they were doing, putting LED bulbs in,
Nice.
which require much less energy. So you could attach one of these wind turbines to the base or some part of the pole. It could feed energy to run the bulb of the street light, and the excess could be fed into the grid because the street light is connected to the electrical system, right? So it's a great, clever scheme, I think.
Yeah,
and
for
it
sure.
concludes here and then it concludes by saying the turbine can capture the wind, but it's intended to harness the air movement of passing vehicles. Thomas says that a small car passing the turbine at 50 miles per hour displaces air at 12 miles per hour, enough for the turbine to rotate. On a highway installation, each turbine can produce 30 times the power of a 300-watt solar panel on average, and the equivalent of about 14 panels while on a building. Wow. That's something to think about.
Yeah, no, it's like you said, it's not the first time that we've seen this, but any further adoption of the idea is always a plus.
Amen.
And this also reminds me, and like actually the CNN article does a good job with the little gallery that they start with. They of course show his idea, and then they show the offshore wind farm.
Right.
This weird tree that I haven't seen.
Yes, fascinating.
And then of course fields and farmland that would otherwise. But then they show the ship, which we've covered the ship as well, and has actually we covered not too long ago because it had its main voyage, like it was actually being used. Yep. So lots of good idea. And I would have even thrown in if I was the editor of CNN, which I'm not. I would have also thrown in, Ralph, the idea of the windbreaks that they use at airports. To take
Mm-hmm.
So, all of these ideas is just taking the waste of energy production, which is usually wind or heat, and turning that into further energy. It's just making everything more efficient, which, hey, that's great news. Turning waste into a product is always the right way to do it. So
I was just thinking, hey, Ben, I was just thinking think about subway tubes where you frequently have trains going through. If you lined those tubes with these little guys, turbines of some form, you could have this endless supply of energy coming through. It's so cool.
We didn't cover it, and we covered it a couple of years ago, but I understand why, it didn't really make it into our stories. But the idea of Hyperloop One, the company tried to move people, that didn't work. They moved over to freight, that didn't work, and then the whole company closed down. So some of these kind of research ideas are very interesting and fun, but they don't really stand the test of time. Subways makes a lot of sense, but Ralph, I was just thinking, you said subways and kind of new ideas. I just wanted to say that we didn't mention that on our segment, that Hyperloop One kind of didn't work out. So like I wanted to mention that.
True.
Yeah. Very I'm sure there will be ideas, Ralph, in the future that will mimic it. Just because the research didn't work out for the company doesn't mean that the research itself wasn't useful. So I'm sure someone in the future will find a use for it.
Exactly.
So there you go. Story number one. Story number two. Let's go ahead and go go a little bit different here, and we're going to talk about green hydrogen production, which stupid me, I'm not really familiar with non-green hydrogen production, so or really hydrogen production in general. So let's talk about potentially, because hydrogen has been hailed as a potential replacement for gasoline. It kind of serves the same function, but of course, getting it, acquiring it, transporting it has hurdles. So let's talk about story number two.
Yeah, story number two is, again, a real example of a trend situation in terms of a technology breakthrough. And this one, folks, geek alert warning. This story is going to be pretty darn geeky, and I apologize for that. And I'm going to ask everybody to have patience because I need to set the stage, and then we'll get into what's going on, why this is such a big, important thing for green hydrogen. Dirty hydrogen, a lot of times, is created using natural gas. So you can see that that's a fossil fuel equation that's just kind of not so great. And again, as Ben was saying, and he's so right, hydrogen is something that the world, the Toyota and all kinds of the Chinese are really looking at hydrogen for vehicle as a vehicle fuel. In fact, I just saw a story the other day that in China, the sale of hydrogen-based automobiles jumped 70% last year. Now, it's still a minuscule, tiny fraction of their automobile market, but it's an indication, ding, 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 of a trend. That's what Ben and I talk about every Friday. So with all that, let me give you the headline here. A discovery enables cost-effective and eco-friendly green hydrogen production. This comes from TechXplore, a wonderful website. Again, come out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes. We have the links, pictures, all this good stuff, and you can dive deeper. A lot of times I do in the show notes, I have side notes, I have additional information that's not in the articles, and additional links to help explain. And we do need to set the stage for this. So let me set the stage for this geeky stuff. So this story has to do with one of the challenges of using water to produce green hydrogen. So we've talked about this before. So in the world of science and technology around the globe, people are going, we can use water to create green hydrogen. And you have to bear with me because it's kind of geeky. In specific, we're talking about the cost of the currently used catalysts in the water electrolysis process used to create hydrogen. So water electrolysis, if I could say it, is how we make hydrogen from water. Time out. What is water electrolysis? It's a cutting-edge technology that produces hydrogen from the process of electrolyzing water. It is considered a key technology for achieving a carbon-neutral society as it enables the production of environmentally friendly hydrogen without carbon emissions. So step one, water electrolysis. This is a groovy thing. It works and it has a lot of potential. But go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, no, and I'm sorry for kind of messing with your flow.
No
It's just this idea has been around for so long that I've actually met a few people, and I've actually heard a couple of my, kind of holistically, my colleagues. Some people have spent their entire lives, Ralph, and like there are like YouTube videos and there's like conspiracy theories that where people are like pouring water into their gas tank and then their car starts up and they start, driving around on water. This idea that you can do electrolysis in a combustion engine and you can run your car off off just pure water. That is like one of my favorite conspiracy theories because so many people are like, this is possible. They're hiding the technology, the government, the shadow government. Like it's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole. But we're talking about the actual scientific application of it.
That's correct. Right. Yeah, that's right. I immediately thought about they'll figure out a way for Taylor Swift to be at blame for this or something. Anyway, going back to the side note I inserted this side note because I felt everybody needs to understand what water electrolysis is, and so do I, for that matter. So what is water electrolysis? The process of decomposing water into hydrogen and hydroxide ions by passing an electric current through it, meaning the water, is called electrolysis. The ions move to the opposite electrodes to liberate pure hydrogen and oxygen gases. And there's a source here, a wonderful tutorial on this whole process. So again, crudely speaking, you kind of electrify water and the process separates out and creates hydrogen and oxygen gases as an output, which is great. That sounds great. Well, what's wrong with this so far, Ralph? Nothing, but there is a problem. Water electrolysis to produce hydrogen to date typically uses expensive precious metal catalysts like platinum and iridium. This news story has to do with a breakthrough water electrolysis technology that has been developed that offers an alternative to precious metal catalysts. So you see the story here, water electrolysis, great. We can create hydrogen, but guess what? Doggone it, it's like the batteries. They use materials that are expensive. Well, wait a minute. We're going to talk about research out of Korea that has created an alternative that's extremely promising.
it's just so fun that, like, it's like, oh, we can make fuel out of water, and it's like, great. It's like, oh, you just have to run it through a mesh of gold, platinum, and uranium, and and out comes fuel, and it's like, well, it's not so
exactly right. It has to do with commercial viability, right? And again, we've gone through this with other stories where we've got this new technology, but we're still a ways, 10 years away from figuring out how to make it commercially viable, meaning making it low cost. Well, this is why this story is so important.
So and before you get to the big news, I will say that just personally, I do have a brother, for those who don't know, and he's a chemist, and this is kind of what he does every day, and he works for some company. I don't even know the company name, and I probably wouldn't say it, but he works for a company, and his job is to find new, lower cost ways of doing these things.
There you go.
And he does it all the time. Like, it's not that this stuff is impossible, without platinum and iridium, but they just need to do the research and to find a solution. So, just because this is the way they do it now does not mean it's the way they're going to do it in the future, which I'm sure is your next point. But I will say, just personally, it happens all the time. So.
Yeah. And again, apologies to the audience. I know we've been slogging through this, kind of setting the stage, doing a little tutorials, explaining the situation. But finally, here's the big news. Led by a professor at South Korea's School of Energy and Chemical Engineering, a very technical university, and a professor from the Department of Materials Science and Engineering in Korea, the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, so it's these two institutions working together, and the respective professor and their teams. The overall team has developed an alternative catalyst approach that enables the production of green hydrogen in a more cost-effective and environmentally friendly manner, bringing us closer to a carbon-neutral society. So I can't stress enough that this is a very important breakthrough that might help make hydrogen, green hydrogen, a very deliverable, very commercially viable. We'll see, but this is very important. So the joint research team has successfully developed what's called a bifunctional water electrolysis catalyst. Oh my gosh, it just gets geekier and geekier because there's the whole world of bifunctional water electrolysis and so forth. I've got a side note if you want to get into that. So they've developed a bifunctional water electrolysis catalyst for the high efficiency and stable production of high purity green hydrogen. High purity. I mean, this is just like win, win, win all across the board. So there's a side note in the show notes if you want to dig into bifunctional water electrolysis, and I assure you it's very geeky, but it's interesting. So going on here, the newly developed catalyst exhibits exceptional durability, even in highly corrosive acidic, gosh, if I could say that, acidic environments. Okay, so here's the deal. What we're going to find out before we go on, we're going to find out there's an element called ruthenium that scientists knew had a lot of promise for being an alternative catalyst, but it had some weaknesses. And so these folks in Korea figured out, if we create a combo of ruthenium, silicon, and tungsten, guess what? We overcome the weaknesses of ruthenium, which is a much less expensive catalyst for this water electrolysis process that in turn creates green hydrogen, okay? So by utilizing ruthenium, silicon, and tungsten, the catalyst they created is more cost-effective compared to conventional platinum or iridium catalysts for making green hydrogen. Furthermore, this new combo solution emits significantly fewer greenhouse gases, making it an eco-friendly alternative to the catalysts of platinum and iridium to make green hydrogen, okay? The research team focused on finding alternatives to precious. God Lord, I'm having trouble today.
You're good.
Alternatives to precious metal catalysts like platinum and iridium, which do, in their favor, have the quality of exhibiting stability in acidic conditions. So, platinum and iridium, yeah, they're expensive, but they really have a quality of being very stable in acidic conditions. Now, a little more, I said, I got to know more about this ruthenium stuff. Ruthenium has gained attention as an eco-friendly metal candidate catalyst due to its relatively low production cost compared to platinum and iridium, and significantly lower greenhouse gas emissions as compared to, again, as I said, platinum and iridium. However, it has faced challenges in commercialization due to its lower catalytic activity compared to platinum and lower stability compared to iridium. Folks, I promise you the next story is much easier to deal with.
So I think what they're saying there is that ruthenium is not as stable or as effective as platinum and iridium, but it's much cheaper than both. So hopefully it can scale better.
That's right. And so
Gotcha.
to overcome the limitations of ruthenium, the Korean research team developed a catalyst combo, let's call it like a recipe, based on ruthenium, silicon, and tungsten. Put these together and bibbidi-bobbidi-boo, you can get a catalyst for water electrolysis.
It does almost seem like magic.
Hydrogen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's so great because they knew ruthenium was a great candidate potentially, but with weaknesses. How can we overcome the weaknesses? Stop thinking about just a single thing. Let's combine some elements, ruthenium, silicon, and tungsten, and away you go. So by enhancing the function of the ruthenium catalyst with this combination of ingredients, which has lower stability in both hydrogen evolution reaction and oxygen evolution reaction, I mean, that's another one of the weaknesses of ruthenium, but they've overcome this with this combination of elements or ingredients. The team demonstrated the catalyst, meaning the combo catalyst of ruthenium, silicon, and tungsten. They demonstrated that combination potential as a bifunctional catalyst. And then I inserted a little comment of my own. I interpret this to mean the team found a way to overcome ruthenium's lower stability issue, which to date has ruled it out as a viable catalyst alternative to precious metals. And one of the team's lead professors stated, quote, the development of this 3-element catalyst is significant as it has the potential to replace expensive platinum and iridium simultaneously. It is expected to be applied to high purity green hydrogen production systems such as proton exchange membrane electrolyzers, and that's a whole world you can dig into, as it can be easily and stably synthesized even in highly corrosive acidic conditions. So folks, I know this was just like a mind melter and you might have gone to sleep for a while here, but I can't stress enough how important this is.
Yeah. So my very rudimentary understanding, and you know, life exists on Earth. Life exists on Earth because water is so stable, and it takes a lot of effort, a lot of work to get water to not be water. And it looks like the stuff that they were using before with all the electricity and the rare metals and all the convoluted stuff. And don't get me wrong, it's still convoluted because it's chemistry, but they're making it a bit cheaper and a bit more accessible. And by a bit, I mean hopefully a lot. So very, very good news.
Yeah, it is great news in the world of hydrogen fuel. That's the bottom line. That's the trend. Let's see what happens with this great discovery from Korea. Again, salute to the South Koreans.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen hydrogen fuel, starting to kind of pick up, and more places are, having the hydrogen fuel cells. It's just a matter of time because, it's not just about electric cars. It's not just about hybrid cars. You need a little bit of everything. So there you go.
Yeah.
Story number 2, story number 3. And let's go ahead and talk about... I've seen this kind of thing before, but it's on those boards that like kind of surf above the water. But this one is... Right. Yeah, this one is even taking it to the next level because it's not just a single surfboard that goes above the water. It's not anything like that. This is... I've never been to Seattle, but I'm assuming if I saw something like this, I'd be like, okay, there's a glitch. Our world is not real, and the boat is floating above the water. The pictures of this say it all, Ralph. But this is crazy.
They do, and the video as well. And this actually is a great story coming out of Sweden. So here's the headline, and what Ben was talking about is those surfboards that have a pole and a motor under the water, and they reach a certain speed where you can be lifted, the hydroplane, out of the water. That's what we're talking about. And of course, if you're watching the video of our presentation, you're seeing the video that comes from the company we're going to be talking about. So here's the headline: World's first electric flying passenger ship. Now, ship's a little bit of it. When I say ship, they're
called hydrofoils. That's it, hydrofoil.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
When I hear the word ship, I think of something very large. This is what we're going to be talking about is I think it's a 30 passenger commuter boat, really, but it's a quibble on my part. World's first electric flying passenger ship could drastically cut commute times. This comes from a great outlet called The Cool Down. And again, we've got all the links to the videos, everything that you're seeing that Ben is showing you right now. It's all there in the show notes. Well, here we go. A hydrofoil electric ferry is set to begin transporting passengers in Sweden later this year. So this is early stuff, guys. Transforming a 55-minute commute from the suburb of Eckerö, I hope I'm saying that right, to Stockholm's city center into a much more exciting and speedy 25-minute commute, basically cutting it in half and a little bit more. The vehicle from Swedish tech company Candela Technology AB has completed testing and is now set to enter the production phase. The Candela P12 shuttle, that's the name of the craft, can transport 30 passengers at once, reaching a maximum speeds of 30 miles per hour with a range of 50 miles on a single charge. Hydrofoil boats use a specially shaped hull to lift the boat off the surface of the water as it gains speed. It's a weird thing, reducing drag and enhancing speed and fuel efficiency. As such, they have become favored by some manufacturers who are seeking to create the most energy efficient possible watercraft. Wow. And the video really, it's just wonderful because it really shows it in action and it's fun to watch. So as a result of the technology, the boats are essentially flying just above the surface of the water. And in fact, according to a driver during a video released by Candela, the company that's making this boat, that shows the boat in action, the driver noted, when you have space in front of you and you throttle up and take off, so to speak, you are subject to the same physical principles as an airplane during flight. It's like it's just kind of fun, riding a magic carpet, basically. Wow. And according to Candela, the Candela P12 can use 80% less energy than traditional vessels, which I presume he means traditional fossil fuel-based vessels, when moving at speeds in excess of 21 miles per hour. Combined with the fact that the boats run on electricity instead of gas, this type of hydrofoil could well be the water vessel of the future this is a commuter shuttle kind of thing.
I doubt you'll see one of those giant like tankers or cargo ships doing this.
No.
But the video does kind of show a lot. And one thing that they kind of say in the video, which is right there, it says that they're not pushing all the water out of the way of the boat. So like you can see the wake of the boat, at least in the video, you can kind of see how minimal of a wake there is. So Ralph, like they're not having to force all of that away from them. It's a very, very small wake and they're able to just glide over the water. It makes so much sense.
Yeah, it does. And the history of their company was smaller craft, and then they gradually got up to this 30-passenger shuttle, which is very, very cool. Could be very useful. And, you know what, Ben? A lot of times we look at these kind of technologies and we say to ourselves, great for commercial, general purpose use, but think about this for rescue purposes. Think about this for harbor patrols. Think about this for police enforcement on the water and all that sort of thing. This kind of vehicle could be very useful as well.
Yep, and I'm sure even for tackling things like choppy waves and kind of weather conditions and whatnot, for consumers, for rescue, for any kind of official capacity. I mean, it makes so much sense for boats. And what I really like about this one is not that stuff that isn't available isn't important, but hey, you go to the website and they're like, hey, test drive this now. You can buy. Do you want to buy one? Go ahead and do it. So I don't think they're selling just yet, but they are taking reservations and. But yeah, you can test drive one of these things. Unfortunately, they're in Norway, so not really our neck of the woods. But still very, very cool. And the fact that they're able to make it like a shuttle and not just a little passenger craft, but one of these larger shuttles, very, very fun.
And one
So,
last point, in the show notes, there's a link to a video dedicated to explaining the motor that's under the water you're not seeing in the
yeah.
videos. And if you want to geek out on that, check it out because it's pretty interesting stuff. It's just a tubular motor-like thing, and it's
Just
not
looks like
very
little
huge.
torpedoes. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And the power that they're able to generate enough to lift the craft out of the water. Wow.
Yep. And makes perfect sense for these short, quick back and forths. They don't have to go very far.
Exactly.
So great application, great technology. And again, very trippy, just to see this giant 30 passenger craft just lift out of the water like it's, like it's nothing. So very, very fun there. So story number 3, story number 4. And, gene therapy, and I'm sure this has to do, if I could gloss over quickly, gene therapy and like CRISPR type of technology. When CRISPR came out, and I'm assuming this is about, CRISPR type technology, I'm hoping, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
Related,
yeah. So when CRISPR came out like 2 or 3 years ago, or at least when the technology was officially published, the people who wrote it and who wrote the paper instantly just won Nobel prizes for their respective fields. It was hailed as such a great achievement, and I've been seeing, Ralph, more and more stories that like they're using it in a lot of different applications, but I saw one that they're using it to prevent a type of genetic disorder that just causes people to live with pain just for their entire lives, and it's like chronic, it's a genetic condition. We saw cures for sickle cell anemia. We saw cures for so many different diseases that only affected a small portion, so they weren't really commercially viable to kind of do, but now we're getting cures for these things that we didn't have before. And I love seeing a technology that was promised so much and then actually delivers on that promise. So story number 4 follows that trend as well.
Absolutely. And in fact, story number 4, friends, if you're brand new to the show, a lot of times we end this segment on Fridays with something from the world of medical technology. And that's near and dear to my heart. And this story is just... I just gasped when I saw the headline. I thought, how wonderful. And that brings up the point. What Ben and I do is we're going to leave you feeling good and encouraged and hopeful. Green hydrogen could be becoming more real. Boats that can fly over the water, more artificial wind capturing devices to generate
energy of the
electricity.
future, vehicles of the future. Yeah, everything.
And if you haven't felt good so far in today's show, I'm going to end it with something that I think is just so inspiring. So here's the headline: Gene therapy administered via virus, by way of benign virus, cures deafness in an 11-year-old boy. What? Love it. From futurism.com. A great, great story. And here we go. An 11-year-old boy with congenital deafness can now hear sound after he received groundbreaking gene therapy that replaces a mutated gene with the correct version. And this story from futurism.com actually references a story from the New York Times. Okay. So here's what the little boy said: "There's no sound I don't like. They're all good." Bless his heart. This little guy's name is Assam, Aissam, last name Dam, D-A-M. So he told this to the reporters at the New York Times. Dam's deafness was due to a mutation to a gene called otoferlin, Otoferlin, according to the news outlet, meaning the New York Times. The gene makes a protein that's a key component in relaying sound between the inner ear and the brain. But a mutated version of the otoferlin gene impedes this process. In other words, if you have malfunctioning a version of this otoferlin gene, your hearing is impacted, right? And this disorder only affects about 200,000 people across the whole globe. So it's a tiny, tiny fraction of the population, but you're going to see the implications of this research at the very end of the story. So bear with us. In early October of just this last year, very recently, Dam was the first person in America to receive the otoferlin gene therapy as part of a clinical study by pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly and Akouros, Akouos, a gene therapy company or business that Eli Lilly bought in 2022. So Eli Lilly just bought this company in 2022. In 2023, they come up with this solution. They apply it to this 11-year-old boy, and he can hear again. Wow. So at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, researchers injected into one of Dam's ears liquid containing a benign virus carrying functional copies of the otoferlin genes, of the good, correct otoferlin genes. In specific, they squirted the normal genes into his cochlea, a spiral-shaped hollow in the inner ear that's filled with liquid and lined with hair cells that send sound information to the brain. If you pull up a chart of the human ear, you'll see the cochlea and know exactly what we're talking about, which is so weird to think that it's little hairs inside of this thing floating in liquid. It's all too weird, too weird. But once they injected, so to speak, the correct otoferlin genes, it took a short time, just mere days, for the gene therapy to do its miraculous work. Dam's father said his son was picking up traffic sounds with his treated ear, and now his ear has the ability to hear close to normal, according to the father, which is just, oh, what a miracle. With Dam's newfound hearing, the New York Times reports that researchers are going to continue to study and enroll even younger patients. Now, even though this particular type of gene therapy targets a rare type of mutation in the inner ear, here's the kicker. It also opens up the possibility of treating other forms of congenital deafness. This is a door opener. This is the trend. This is a great example of the twinkle of the eye, very beginning, super encouraging trend. And so for more information on gene therapy and deafness, I've got a link in here to the new genetic treatment successfully lets deaf children hear, another source that gets into this whole story. What a great way to end the show. Because, wow, it's so wonderful.
And it's always one of those things that I'm still not clear about because the science is pretty new. Although, like I just looked this up, and generative AI search results, so hopefully it can be trusted, and they pull from a couple different sites, but they're saying gene therapy is usually lasts between minutes and a few hours, and ideally a good gene therapy will last the rest of the patient's life. So I'm wondering, does the patient have to come in every year maybe for
great question.
A new kind of treatment, Ralph? But I think what they're saying is that new guidelines suggest that studies using integrated vectors follow patients for at least 15 years. So I guess they're hoping for, after 15 years, we can kind of assume it's going to be for the rest of their lives.
Fascinating. Yeah.
But yeah, if Ralph, imagine just you're deaf for the first 5-6 years of your life, or 7, 8, 9, and then you get swimmer's ear for like 5 minutes, and then you're good to go for the rest of your life. You can hear everything. It's
amazing.
It's incredible. It really is.
Yeah. And going back to an earlier comment you made before we dove into this story in detail, one of the most encouraging trends is the combination of artificial intelligence and gene therapy. Mm-hmm. You take these two magnificent, earth-shaking technologies, breakthroughs, and working together, we're just at the very beginning of seeing magnificent, miraculous things coming forward in the field of medical technology. So very exciting. Medical
technology is definitely already starting to, it's not even going to, it's already starting to take off. And
yes.
Very, very cool. So there you go. Story number 4. And ladies and gentlemen, that's about the time that we kind of aim for our segments. So, usually we kind of drop off here, but I will say that Ralph has included a number of honorable mentions. So let's go through the headlines of those, just to kind of tantalize you. And then, Ralph.
So at the end of the show notes, some honorable mentions. It doesn't mean they aren't great stories, as Ben likes to say. It's just we don't have time. But I just wanted to share with you. So the headlines here, first story is MIT's breakthrough self-powered sensor harvests energy from the air. From Interesting Engineering. Check that out. It's a very, very interesting story. Let me scroll down to the next one. Here we go. Next headline. Scientists say they've invented a way to turn genes, on and off like light switches. Kind of relates to the story we just did about gene therapy. This comes from futurism.com, another very geeky but very interesting story. And last but not least, here we go. Intel, good old Intel, says it will deliver 5 times increase in AI performance by 2025. Comes from Extreme Tech, talks about Intel and AMD and what's going on with the whole world of creating brain chips, as it were, that really focus on artificial intelligence. A really interesting trend story as well. So that's what we have for you this week, and I hope we leave you feeling positive and encouraged.
Absolutely. And really, all these stories are great. And Ralph, I want to thank you so much for putting them together. And we'll be back next week with 4 more stories. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to check that out, computeramerica.com. Again, Ralph's part of the page is right up there, and you can check out his past shows, all the show notes, all that kind of thing. But with that being said, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And ladies and gentlemen, don't let the bad news get you down. Don't worry. The weekend's coming. We are going to have a lot of fun next week. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Ralph, thank you for coming on. And everyone, we'll catch you here next time. Same place. Have a good one. Bye.